next important date was January 16th, 2018. Not only was this my mother's birthday, but also the day that I would be sentenced. My court hearing was early in the morning. I woke up early, and my boyfriend came with me. I sat in the back of the car while my mom drove. He told me I was going to be fine, and that everything would work out, and that I'd see him really soon. So we're driving along the highway. My mom hops on the 407 highway because, there's always rush hour, and we didn't want to be late. And then we park, head to the courthouse is on here, Ontario, because that's where the airport court is basically. And have my last cigarette, because I know it's going to be my last, and go in. I'm ready, I'm wearing a blazer with a pencil skirt, and I also have a little bag full of sweatpants because my friend who did time said that I could bring a bag. So I had stuff to change into when I was ready to go down into the bowels of the courthouse. And so we meet my lawyer, we're called there, and we sit in the courtroom and wait. Seems like forever. And, then I see people in my family all start to show up. I didn't even know they were coming. And at this point, the courtroom's full. And even people like Bishop Tonus was there because he knew me from when I was a kid. And that's when I knew that I knew it was going to be okay, but to see all those people there that day was really, really comforting. And so then my lawyer kind of briefs me on just a couple things that I have to say. I have to talk about kind of what I learned and my last words, I guess. And so the lawyer and the prosecutor go up and they're talking about what I did, and then I pled guilty and that they were submitting a joint submission of 4 years. And I just answered yes to all the judge's questions. And at that point, I apologized to the court, the community, my family. And I say that I'm never, ever going to do anything like this again. And then they go back and deliberate. And Justice Sterno comes out, and he's like, at this point, I've decided to allow a joint submission of 4 years. And because he has a tremendous respect for the law, and because also I'd put incredible effort into changing myself and my life around in this period of time, that he thought 4 years was appropriate. And there was no gavel, but I could almost hear it in my head, that knock. And they're like, you can say goodbye to your family. And so I just kiss and hug my whole family. My family's crying, but I'm ready. I'm okay, I got this. I'm ready. And these two officers come into the courthouse, and they don't even know who they're looking for, because I don't look like a hardened criminal, right? I guess the point of the whole story is that this kind of stuff can happen to anyone. And I'm like, yeah, you're actually you're looking for me. And so quickly, put on the sweatpants over the tights, because I just whipped off the skirt, put on the tights, put on the sweatshirt. And the officers, they don't handcuff me in the courthouse. They take me into this room to the side where the door's closed. And then now you are officially incarcerated, right? And they take me down to the basement where they take out my shoelaces. They take out I have a hoodie on, and they take out the string. And I also had a fur coat, not a fur coat, a big bulky winter coat, because I thought it was gonna be freezing down there, which it typically is. So I was all bundled up, ready to go in. And so I'm I'm put into the basement in a holding cell. And this is after I've been kind of processed. And they put me in a cell with some other woman who's clearly really struggling in withdrawal. And she's moving around a lot. And I'm sitting there, I'm oh boy, okay. I just don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if she doesn't really talk to me, but she's pacing. And these cells are really, really, really small. She's pacing back and forth, and it's giving me anxiety, but it comes with the territory, I guess. And then not long after, they actually moved me to another holding cell. And in the elevator, when they'd taken me down in this big stainless steel elevator, it looks like lovely courthouse, and then you open these doors and it's everything stainless steel, right? It's two different worlds. And they're oh, did you have a co-accused? And I'm yeah. And they're oh, is she here? And I'm no. And so then the next cell that they put me in, there's another girl in there. And she turns out to be a year younger than me, right? And we end up being friends for this whole journey. But the reason we even started talking was because she turned on the tap and wash our hands or something, and the water just like exploded everywhere. And like we actually laughed. We were laughing together. And then we just like broke into conversation about like how crazy this was. And she has the same personality as me. She's like really nice. She's sitting there trying to sleep in their frame porting, right? Because I guess people, they're girls like me. Like they're all in their 20s. A lot of them, not everyone, but a lot of them in their 20s, you know, never had a criminal record before, never been involved in this kind of stuff, and just got caught up in the wrong world with the wrong people, me including bad substances, wrong substances, and that, you know, criminal cocktail right there. So we sit in the holding cell for, I don't know, I think it's like till 3 or 4, and then the paddy wagon from the correctional center, from the provincial jail, comes to get us. And so at this point, like me and this girl are like now friends, right? Because she's nice, she's chatty, and we talk about our sentences and how we got there, and now we know like we're gonna be friends, and we're like, oh, we're gonna do this together. Like we're going to the same place for like a minute, you know, like a while. And so we're shackled together, put in the paddy wagon, and there's windows, but they're foggy. Like you can't see out of them. So you're kind of like lurching around on the highway, shackled to someone, right? It's like stopping and going. There's no seatbelts. It's like Canada's Wonderland in there. It's crazy. You just never know. Like your head's getting like ragdoll and everything. And so finally we get to Vanier, which is in Milton. And then you're taken out and then you're processed there. So you're strip searched, and then they take down all your information and they do like a health check on you. And then you're put in another holding cell. Then once all your records are like ready to go, they have all your belongings like put away. They're like, okay, pick up some stuff from this rack. And you walk single file down this like pink hallway. And there's like a yellow line, and you have to stay to the right of the yellow line and go through the metal detectors. And you have to pick up your bedding, and it's like on this metal rack. And then you get your institutional clothes, which are very glamorous sweatpants and a sweatshirt. So dark green. And then, you know, those standard issue shoes, like mine were blue with a rubber sole. And you're not allowed jewelry or anything like that, obviously, or no money, and they take all that. And then they put you to your range. And because I had a federal sentence, I was automatically put in the max range. Yeah. So maxed out in the provincial jail. And everyone in there like was honestly fine. Like there was people that kind of didn't get along, but that wasn't me. Like I just didn't get involved in that subculture. And they put me in with someone from Thunder Bay. Like I had a cellmate, and she was actually really nice. She was on methadone, so she slept a lot of the time, and she was a really, really nice girl. So it wasn't like this crazy place that people thought it to be. But, you know, I made like the classic mistakes, like trying to jog around the range. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna get some exercise, and started running, and apparently that's like, you don't do that because people think you're gonna attack them. So like the other roommates are like, oh my God, Em, like don't be running around here. Like people are gonna think that you're gonna jump them. And I'm like, oh, okay, just like want a little exercise. You know, so I'd do like workouts in my cell. And a lot of the time the cells were locked down because there was no staff, or they were just like really lazy and they just didn't want to let us out. And there was a little library, I guess you can say, which consisted of books that were, you know, had missing covers, and they were like romance novels. And so I think I ended up reading like a J.D. Robb novel and something like that, because I was only there for 10 days, and they get you up really early to eat like breakfast. Then you get to walk around for a little bit, and then they usually lock down the cells again. And there's only one TV. There's no TVs in your cells. There's one, so I could kind of see it out of my door, but not really. So I kind of just like counted things on the walls and stared and thought a lot and chatted with my cellmate. So she was pretty nice. And then there was like, sometimes there was programs at night, but they always like seemed to get canceled. And then there was yard time, and the yard was like, I don't know, 30 feet squared. And you had to put on these giant jackets to walk around. And so it was icy and whatever, but it was fine. Like I loved the 15-minute yard time because it was the only outside time you got. And even when you had a window, like you couldn't see outside because it was like that blurred glass. So after that, so there's a bus. Well, they call it a bus, but it's really just like a paddy wagon that comes to get the federal people with federal sentences. It comes every 2 weeks. So we got there on whatever day it was. It was a Tuesday. Yeah, it was Tuesday, and at that point, like the bus cycle wouldn't be back till the following Friday. So I spent like a solid 10, 11 days in there. But I had like the girl that I met at the courthouse. We were just best friends. Like we always just like went for little walks. We got to know each other really, really well. So it was been great having like a good friend. And then the day came for us to all leave. And then so there's a couple people from our range going, and then there's people that were convicted of murder that were leaving, right? So it's just you have everyone kind of all shoved into the back of like a paddy wagon, and you're shackled hands and feet, right? So like an animal. Like it was a bit much, I would say, but you know, like you do what you got to do. I mean, I'm not gonna run anywhere, so. But so after you're processed out, like the guards there were so rude. Like I didn't know any of these rules. Like so when I like asked questions about the rules, they spoke to me in like these derogatory ways. Like just I was like, okay, like whatever, but I just didn't think it was necessary. Like they had an attitude problem, not me. But anyway, it's their loss. So then we get on this bus, and there's a bailiff? Is that what they're called? Bailiffs? So they drive like the vehicle, and so you're all put in the back, and there's a camera that watches you. And if you guys, like if we all got too hot, like we'd all either put thumbs down or thumbs up, because this is the middle of winter, right? So a lot of fluctuating temperatures. And now you're stuck in this paddy wagon with like 6 other people, and it got pretty hot in there pretty quickly. So we had to go to Hamilton jail first to pick up the people that were in the Hamilton jail. And then we finally went to Kitchener, which seemed like forever, but I'm so glad I didn't have to pee, because like if you did, like too bad. Like that's why some girls would actually wear pads, like even if they weren't on their period or something, they would wear pads in their underwear, because if they really had to pee or something, they would just like go in their pants. It's like so sad. But then so we get to Kitchener, and then, you know, we finally hear the van or the bus stop, and then you have to wait for a bit, and you think like after the car goes off, you know, they're gonna open the door right away. They never do that. The car goes off, and then you hear people leave, and then you're just sitting there waiting for this door to freaking open, to let some sunlight in, to let some air in. And you're all shuffled out onto this sidewalk, and you can see trees, and then you all go single file in, and once you get inside, then they take off all the shackles, and you are like put up against a wall. Like you have to face the wall and then turn around, and then there's a drug dog right at first. It sniffs you, and then you have to get strip searched, and then you get processed. So you get your photo taken, but the guards there are like really nice. Like because this is people's home for a really long time, right? So some people, like most of the guards that I met in federal prison were like really friendly. So, and really helpful actually. So nothing bad to say there. So it's not just our fingerprints that are getting taken this time, it's like actually your whole palm. And now my blood has also been taken too, so my blood's on file. And they pick a house for you, basically. There's 16 houses total in the prison that I'm going to. And this is in the general population section. So the Grand Valley Institution actually has 3 levels of security, well 4. There's like administrative segregation, which they don't call it that anymore because they weren't allowed to, but they just call it something else. It's called mental health watch, but it's literally segregation. Then they have max, general population, or medium security, and then minimum. So because I was like nonviolent, if you're nonviolent, everyone just gets put into general population for like the first couple months until like you show that you're like on track, and then you get reviewed again. But until then, I had to spend some months in the general population area, which is actually a lot bigger than the other areas. So, you know, there's like, it's like a big crazy 8. Think of like a trail that's like a crazy 8, and then there's houses along all the edges of the 8, I guess. And then there's a school building, there's like a gym building, and there's portables in the middle of the crazy 8. So those are like where the parole offices are. That's where like the music trailer was, and just various programs that have used these buildings throughout the years. But it's still like, it's not a joke, you know. You still have to like you're in prison.
Yeah.
right? But people are like, oh, aren't you scared of this, that? And I'm like, honestly, they're just people. Like, if anything, there's just as violent people that aren't in prison. They're sometimes even less predictable than people that are in prison. So what's the big difference? You know, like I've lived in different countries. I've lived in different cities. For me, going to prison was moving to another country and getting immersed in a whole new culture with its different food, different people, different language, different borders. So I just kind of saw my sentence as that, like a trip abroad, kind of, with a lot of rules. So when you get there, you have to go through another round of processing. So you have to do a whole set of like IQ tests and health exams. They have like a whole health unit in there. Then they ask you again about your crime, about what you did. I've probably told the officers, like different levels of officers, what's happened like 20 times at this point, but they just like to document it over and over again to make sure your story lines up, to make sure like they can go through it with a fine-tooth comb, right, and question you about like any irregularities, stuff that wasn't maybe mentioned. So you do that, and then you're kind of told what programming you're going to be doing. So I had to do like moderate intensity programming because there was a lot of substance use involved in my crime, and like prior to that, it's not like I just like met someone and decided to smuggle drugs. Like there was deeper issues before that, right? Which is the nature of, which I think it's the nature of like a lot of crime is like something else. It's not evil. It's not bad intentions. It's like pain, right? So, so that program was going to be 60 days, but first I had to take the intro program called Women's Engagement Program. So that was 12 days. And so until then, you just kind of walk around. Like there's times that you have to be inside your unit, available for count twice a day, and it's called stand to count.
Oh, right.
So it's like a military style, and you have to be like you have to be in your room or your cell, facing the door, and maintain eye contact with them. So the rooms in the houses was kind of like a dorm room, and it had like a square window in it. So at night, like you couldn't have the curtain down, like you had to pin it up so that they could see, and you had to have your ID card in the window so they knew it was you. Each house has a kitchen, like a freezer, there's like a little storage room. The house rep is responsible for allocating the groceries that you order, but each person gets to choose what groceries they want to eat that week. We all had a budget of $38.01. So we get this money from the government or wherever it comes to buy that amount in food. And there were items on the list. It wasn't like, oh, get eight burgers for $10. It was like, okay, the price of one burger is, the price of one apple is, one egg roll. And it also incorporated different kinds of like dietary restrictions. So like they had vegan, they had vegetarian, they had gluten-free, but you had to medically prove that it was gluten-free. Okay. And then they had halal. Sometimes you could go in like for that week with someone else. Like, so when I got there, the same girl that I met in the cell at the courthouse, she was actually in my house, and she was actually my first roommate. So we were just like all hunky-dory. We were like, okay, this is great. Like, we're not scared. Like, we're gonna be fine. So that friendship was
pretty helpful.
Yeah. She's still in though. She'll be out soon. But yeah, she got 6 years.
For the same thing.
Yeah, but she had more. And she also took hers to trial. So if you go to trial and lose, they're like, well, you wasted our time. So
right.
It's also like me taking responsibility, pleading guilty very early, took responsibility. So that was one of the mitigating factors. But.
What happened to that you're co-accused?
I don't know. Like, I don't really care. Like,
never.
He'll get his like own. Like, I'm not really worried because at first people instigated me. They're like, don't you want to like get him back? And I'm like, yeah. So I want to be a perpetrator of another crime and get wrapped back into that? Like, no. Like, the best of revenge that I can get would be like what I like to call boomerang revenge. And it's like, instead of like throwing punches, you throw like a boomerang and it like hits you in the ass so hard that you just like propel into the future. That's my little concept. I stayed in there the whole time that I was in general population. Okay. People came and went in our house. Like, we had some people that came to the house and didn't survive in there. Like, they got into arguments and they were moved. Like, they do house moves when there's problems, but because like I got along with everyone in the house, like I didn't have to be moved. It was very petty, a lot of the stuff, and I've always been very good at abandoning petty stuff, in prison or not. So I think that's why, like, obviously being in a hen house for for 10 months
Yeah.
is difficult. Like, it's a lot of estrogen, and like I have a lot of guy friends. So being around like stuff where the smallest thing mattered was like sometimes I would just like I wouldn't listen to like a lot of people because I wouldn't care, right? Or just like be kind. Kindness is so much easier. Like give someone instead of like worrying about what you think happened when you don't even know if it's true.
So what sort of things happen? Give us some list of things that people would do or things that people get into arguments for.
Making messes for sure. Not doing your chores when you're supposed to do your chores. Taking the phone like when you're not supposed to take the phone. Borrowing clothes when you're not supposed to and not giving it back. Screwing with other people's relationships. There's like a lot of relationship drama. Not paying back your money like that you owe in drugs, or like say if I wanted so-and-so shirt and I said, okay, I'll give you $10 of my food because there actually isn't any currency in there, so you find different ways to trade.
Okay.
So you do like hair services or like get your eyebrows threaded, or you'll buy canteen, or there's no actual cash. So if someone's debt wasn't paid, there would be problems there. Or if there's rumors that you ratted on someone, or even if it was like your crime, a lot of the time if you commit a certain crime, like you'd be bullied for sure.
Right.
Like I didn't pretend to be someone that I wasn't in there. And I was always very polite and respectful, and like I didn't get involved in the drug subculture, and I made people laugh and I made people like enjoy their time there, and that's what got me respect. They weren't actually allowed in other houses.
Right.
So one of the most common like violent events would be like something called a run up. And so people would just run in your house and punch you out because there's no cameras. So like on my first couple weeks that happened in our house, and I was like, what's going on? There's 3 girls that came in wearing like steel-toe boots, and they're like, we're so-and-so. And I'm just like sitting there like, uh-oh. And I'm like, kind of panicking. But then they were like looking for someone else. And then they asked one girl like what was going on or like where the person was, and she laughed. She just laughed, and they're like, you think this is funny? And they grabbed her, took her to the end of the hallway, and just started beating her. This poor girl, like she didn't do anything. And there was like blood on the wall. She had like, oh my God, I felt so bad. But I wasn't about to get involved, you know?
Yeah.
Like, cause he was like one-on-one. Like, but if the other 2 jumped in, then like we might have had to. I don't know how well that would have gone, but I don't know.
So what else? What else happened?
Well, the knives are all chained to the wall there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So you can't, and then they lock it up at night. So you're trying to like chop tomatoes, and you gotta get this knife from over here. You can only like kind of chop things on a certain part of the counter. Yeah. And there was definitely drugs that were in there. There was definitely fights. There's a lot of like girlfriend swapping and, you know, so-and-so. And like when you're with someone, when you're in a relationship, it's like very like lovey-dovey. I didn't get involved in any of that. Like I just wasn't an interest to me. Plus I was like still in a relationship with my partner when I went in. So like why would I, you know.
So do you have
That
cigarettes?
needy.
They wouldn't have cigarettes in there? Was that?
Yeah, there's cigarettes in there.
Okay.
I actually didn't smoke any. I almost did. But then I was like, no, because they do random drug tests. And I was like, I don't want, because they test for tobacco in the prison drug test. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because you can't get them easily, so if there's tobacco in there, it's being smuggled in.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
interesting. Do they do searches of your room and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
How
Yeah.
often does that happen?
Every once in a while, like only if they had a real reason to. Will they like flip your room upside down?
Okay.
But I never had. I think one time, so I made this, like my shoulder was like really hurting me in there. Like I was working out a lot and like I hurt my shoulder. So I made this roller, like you know those rollers at the gym where you can roll it. So I got like a pickle jar and I put salt in it, like because we had buckets of salt outside the houses for the winter time. And I put salt inside this pickle jar.
Right.
And I shut it, and then I put 2 socks on it and like made my own roller.
Right.
And they were so confused. It's like why do you have this? I was like, my shoulder hurts. You know.
That's
So
funny.
I think and then they took, because I worked in like carpentry in the carpentry division, and I had some sandpaper to like exfoliate my skin, and I guess you're not allowed that, so they found that one time. And they're just like, we removed this item.
That's funny.
Well, that was
So does that come as like do they keep check marks on all that sort of stuff and they bring it back up? We found this paper that you must have stolen from the carpenter shop, or do they not really care?
Well, they knew I worked there.
Okay.
So it wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay, good.
So the programs, like I mentioned before, I had to do the 12-day one, and then I had to do the 45, no, I think it was 60 days, actually. And sometimes these programs didn't run every day. Like sometimes they'd be canceled, so it ended up taking like 3 months, 3.5 months.
What sort of programs?
It's just one. It's called the Women's Moderate Intensity Program.
Okay.
What does it involve?
WOMIP. It just involves like going back to the very beginning. Like, who are you? And how did you get here? Like, it wasn't just, oh, I got on the plane and brought some drugs, right? It was like, what was I doing? What was I doing before? What do I have? Who's helping me? And like, what are my risky situations? And I'm like, well, alcohol, socializing. Like, I'll admit, I like being out every night. I like being like the life of the party, and
Yeah, of course.
not just to be the life of the party, but I like to party. Like, that was fun, right? Not to have a status as that, but just because it was fun.
Yeah.
I liked getting drunk and going to karaoke. Like, you know what I mean? Not because I was trying to prove myself. It was a good time.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, drugs, like illegal drugs, are bad. But then it was from the celebration standpoint to the medication standpoint was where it really became problematic. And so it's like, how did I meet this guy? And then what were the warning signs that I should have been more aware of? Right? So it came down to 3 main factors that were the reasons why I committed my offense. And that was emotional management, which was 100% true, substances, and associates. So his, like, recruiting me into this was a major factor in this.
So do you feel like you were recruited?
Oh, yeah.
He'd done it before?
Had he?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to make any allegations that
Right.
he did for sure, but they definitely were fault. Like, when I talked to my lawyer, the prosecutor said that they'd been seeing all these, he'd gone multiple times before.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, like, it was like sketchy. So, and I don't know who he traveled with before, but they were probably like, so like when you book plane tickets, like one of the things that they can tell is like how soon you booked it before. It's a sign. If you book it like a second before and you leave, that's usually a drug trafficking sign. Because like normally you plan a vacation, right? You're gonna book it. So that was just one of the many things. But anyway, not really.
So you did this program?
Yeah, and then I did like a lot of the chaplaincy programs. I went to church. I did the sports programs.
So were you a very religious person before you went to church?
No.
Are you a religious person now?
I'm spiritual.
Okay.
Like when I had a friend pass away before I went to jail, he was like my best friend, and then I started like seeing signs of his presence. Like that kind of made me like believe in something again.
Okay.
Yeah, and then everyone that was working in the chaplaincy program was so nice and so kind, and it was just my chance to kind of reconnect with, because I was raised Catholic, right? And so they're always so nice and great. I worked at the library too. My first job was actually working in maintenance, so like picking up garbage, and that was the job that no one wanted, so it was an easy score. And then because I was like very good with my work, like I went every day, and not all the inmates went to the work every day. They'd be like, oh, screw it. That's when the person in charge of like institutional repairs, his name was Paul, he like recruited me. He's like, why don't you just come work with me every day? I'm like, oh yeah, I can probably work with a dude, some testosterone. Like, this is great. He's so funny. So I like got to learn, how to fix stuff and do drywalling, and just like a break away from like the bullshit, like the gossip and stuff that I really didn't care about. So, and he like really wanted to teach. Like that's why he had this like little prison internship program, because he's like, yeah, it's like a little apprenticeship. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go out and like be a carpenter, but like I think it's still good to learn these small things. Like I got a cottage and stuff, and now that I'm sober for an extended period of time, I'm actually intaking and learning all this information.
Excellent.
Yeah. Played some basketball a couple times. Then we played volleyball. We had volleyball Wednesdays, but it wasn't very organized. Like the best part about it was that we got to lift this big speaker out of storage and plug our CD player into it. And so inmates that we had, like, there was no iPods in there, right? So we had all CDs, and these were all scratched and stuff. So sometimes we played volleyball for a couple hours and listened to the same CD 3 times in a row. People would just like stroll on off the court without notice. They'd be kicking the ball, and some teams are more serious than others. And then there's like a lot of times that volunteers would come into the prison as well. So there's something called the Stride program, and I still do a lot of work with them now. So they're regular people who just want to come build relationships with people in prison, healthy relationships, right? So they came every week, and they always bring snacks. We do different activities like crafts and making cards. Yeah.
Any other programs that we've missed in that list?
Oh, I did like a sweat once, like Aboriginal. Because I wanted to, like, one of the things that I wanted to learn in there was like more about different like cultures and religions. And because in prison there was like, you know, people from all over the world in there, I learned more about Islam. I learned more about, you know, like the Native Americans and like what their beliefs were versus, you know, other. Because I think in Canada we don't really know. I never really knew the extent of that history until I went to prison, and I really got to learn everything that happened with the residential schools and like how so much crazy stuff went down that I didn't know. And I was actually able to get a lot of friends because I was willing to learn and understand. Where there also is like a lot of racism in prison, unfortunately, between groups, between, you know, sometimes with staff and stuff. So I loved learning. I was actually part of the Black Women of Diversity group. So of diversity, keyword. So we planned like like a black like an awareness month event. So like it was in February, and then so there's so many women there from different like Caribbean countries and stuff. So they all cooked their own food, and that was really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was great. And what else did I do? I learned how to make donuts. That was fun. I learned how to make chili. And I would just get outside a lot. There was the gardening program, but I didn't like do too much of that because it was like really hot out. And I worked in the mornings too, so I was overworking myself, if you can believe it, in prison. Yeah. So you have to wear these like orange shirts.
It sounded like it was a terrible, terrible experience.
It was like gardening?
No, just being in prison.
It was for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and it could have been a lot worse if my mindset was different.
Yeah.
But I was done suffering the consequences. Like I was going to buffer the consequences now. Very different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had suffered for like 2.5 years on bail, and that like lasted for a very long time, right? So I think sometimes people forget that like, oh, she just went for 10 months, but it's like, no, this started in 2015. And there was a lot of difficulty, a lot. And I wasn't going to let it like strangle me forever. It was like a boa constrictor, right? So now that I was in prison, it was almost like a relief because I knew I was there long enough to actually get and stay sober. I think if I was only in jail for like 2 or 3 months, like my brain wouldn't have had time to heal, and I wouldn't have time to get into a proper routine and build all those new networks, make new friends, right? So the time in there was definitely worth it. And I came out in December in time for Christmas to see my family, so I didn't miss a single Christmas. Right?
So let's talk about that. And so, time leading up to you coming out, the statistics of 1/6 of your sentence.
Yeah.
So, what was the process, and how was that? How did you feel leading up to that, and what happened?
I was excited, but I also was really content. Like I had read so many books in there. I was enjoying reading. Every single book that I read, I would make notes and like read those notes again at night. And so I felt like I was curating my own degree, right? Like it wasn't going to school and learning what someone else is telling you. It's like you pick what you want to learn and you study it and you learn it. So and then I started writing. So that's when I started that prison blog, and my friend who I was talking to over the phone, so I'd write articles and mail them snail mail style to him, and then he'd scan them and upload them, put them online. And then it was in March that the idea for the popcorn came. And then so also a lot of my time was dedicated towards reading about popcorn, getting books from the library about popcorn,
I don't understand. I don't know what the popcorn thing is.
Oh, popcorn. Well, I started a business in prison from my cell, from a prison cell and I called it Cons and Kernels, and I'm growing it so that I can employ people that have been to jail, been to prison, because I know how hard reintegration is. And like I was just lucky because I hit like like the location jackpot, you know, like my family lives close. I grew up in Hamilton. I'm a firm believer, like not a firm believer, but I know that like the degrees of separation between me and the city and the community here helped ease the process of forgiveness, or helped encourage the process of forgiveness. Whereas like if you're a stranger and you're coming from Toronto and you want to start a new life, it's a lot harder because people don't know you, right? Whereas like people reached out to me because like they knew my family, they knew me, they knew my character prior to this. But that's why it's so difficult for a lot of other people, because they don't have that. So being the person that I am and the way that I was raised, I was like, I want to build something, because everyone in there was so nice. They just wanted to get out. Most of them were mothers serving like heavy sentences, and importing was like one of the top offenses in there. So you're separated from your kids for so long. It's expensive, and now you're even poorer. Now you're making $5 a day in prison. They only have to like let you leave with $80 in your bank account. There's very little preparation for finding housing. Like you have to move into a halfway house. But even like the time I spent in the halfway house, like finding housing is like really hard, you know, and especially right now, it's like really, really difficult. And never mind like trying to get your kids back now. Like some people's kids are at CAS, and it's all because like maybe they're so poor that they brought drugs into the country, right? So it's all stemming from deeper issues of like poverty and homelessness and mental health. It's not evil, right? So, but that's what the justice system is. It's like punishing bad. So that's when I thought of building a business called Cons and Kernels, and I took a poll to all the other inmates about what I should call it. And so it was a kind of a collective agreement. And I even got the staff involved at the prison. Like they loved it. They supported everything I was doing. So when you're in prison, you have an inside parole officer and then one on the outside. And so my inside parole officer loved it. So that was part of my correctional plan, was working on that and doing outreach and writing letters. Like I wrote letters to like really influential people, and I got letters back. Because like people don't really think about this, but how many times do you open an email? Like one in every 4. But like if you get a letter from prison, like you're gonna open it, you know. So it's like has like 100% open rate. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna write letters, and every newspaper article that I read, or the magazines that I would read, and I read about like prison issues, or I would write down their names. So by the time I left prison, I had a whole like little black book of names and stuff that I wanted to connect with. And then I also joined the music program as well. So I wrote and produced 2 songs in there that are like recorded, and that was like in conjunction with the CBC. So it's pretty cool. So before I get to leave, I have to go in front of a parole board. And so that means your parents come, like your inside parole officer comes, someone from the halfway house comes, because you have to have someone in the community support you. So they came, and then we talked about all the popcorn stuff and all, as well, like all the other things, you know, like my sobriety, my energy, my positivity, my mood, all those factors. And then you have to pitch yourself. Like it's like a sales pitch. Like, please give me my freedom back. This is what I've done. And they grill you with questions. They ask you lots of uncomfortable things. Tears were definitely shed, but I wasn't too blubbery because, you know, I'd learned to manage my emotions a little bit better at this point. And I was also recently single. Like my relationship like fell apart in there, so that was like pretty hard for me. But I'm actually glad it did, because I got to go through that sober, and like I got to actually go through the heartbreak and the pain. And now I can say that I did it. And like I know I'm gonna go through hard things in my life again. Like there's gonna be stuff happening all the time. People are gonna pass away as you get older, right? I'm gonna lose deals. I'm gonna, you know, fail at certain things. But because like now that I've had like seasons of sobriety inside, I've got to kind of conquer that and like learn to be comfortable with it. Because like I thought that like by using substances, I was making myself stronger and like being able to handle things, everything, but it was actually making me so much weaker. Right? So that's kind of, I wish it didn't happen the way that it did, but it did happen, and it was hard. It was hard for like a while, and there's still parts about that person that I miss, of course, but you know, I'm also so proud of like where I am now. And coming out of prison single was like so empowering, because like now I know like I have all the right people supporting me, and I'm meeting all these new people. And it's just like, I'm dating myself right now. Like you have to invest in you first and foremost, because I think a lot of my time, I spent so much time like being too nice or helping people. And now it's like, I got that time to, it's like it was like a retreat to focus on me. Like a retreat that I couldn't leave, mind you, but it was still, I got to see the positives in it. And that's just like I've always been like that. There's people that complain and then there's people that don't. And I've just been someone that, realized that I shouldn't be complaining because I had so much compared to like a lot of other people. So, and I knew I could make my parents proud. Like I knew I could, like that, there wasn't a doubt in my mind that I couldn't make my family proud of me again at that point. So you go into like this parole board room and there's like a TV. Sometimes there's actually the judge, like the panelists there, and there's no victims for my crime. So it was just the two people. And then they asked me and they're like, yeah, I mean, I actually have the audio recording of it. Yeah. And it went for about an hour. Statistically on paper, I was eligible for day parole to be released for day parole before December 3rd, but because there's like backlogs and like there was no room in the halfway house, like I just stayed a little bit longer, which is why I actually got my full parole what seemed like a week earlier, but it was actually right on time. So, they deliberate for 5 minutes and then they grant to be day parole, but not full parole because of that time that I got arrested when I was out. Yeah. And because also I went on 2 trips home, like they're called unescorted temporary absences, and your parents pick you up and they take you home for the weekend. But because me and my dad went to like a jazz bar, it wasn't even a bar, like it was like a live music lounge, and me and my dad went. We didn't drink because my dad like loves music, and like, but they accused me of going to like a nightclub, and has in the paperwork it's like O'Brien frequented a nightclub area and like went to a nightclub. Like they twisted it all. And my dad was like, this is so ridiculous. But and I was honest about it. I was like, yeah, I went to see live music. And they're like, they lost their shit. They're like, oh my God, Hess Village. Like, they never even set foot inside. Like to know that it's not a nightclub. Yeah. It's like everyone in there was like over 40, like I was the youngest person there by far, but I just loved music. Like, and there was maybe like 10 people in there, like sitting, watching someone play the saxophone. It wasn't... But on paper, it was just blown up to be this like wild night. And so they're like, well, you have to prove that you're not going to do any of those wild antics anymore. So they denied me my full parole. So that's why I didn't automatically get full parole. I had to submit a piece of paper before, like it was submitted in May. And I had to have the support of my parole officer to do that, but I've been good.
So walk me through the day you left.
My mom picked me up and...
No, from the moment you got up, because you had to say goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
Did you sleep the night before?
Yeah, it was bittersweet though. We had little dance parties. It was, because I also created this little project called Memium Security. And it was like a play on memes, like internet memes, but because we didn't have the internet in there, I would take newspaper clippings and like cut out the pictures and like pair them to like prison scenarios. And so like this went viral on the compound. It's like in the classroom I could print multiple, like I'd also use the clip art from Microsoft Word. So like those old school clip arts, like just to make people like, I thought it was so funny. And then I mailed one out to my mom and then people were like, well, what is that? And then I was like, oh, it's Memium Security. And some of them didn't even know what a meme was because they'd never been on the internet. But like, I ended up printing out like tons of copies and people just loved it. Like it made people laugh because it was like this collective challenge made to make you laugh, right? So that people were sad that I wasn't going to be able to make them anymore. So the night before I just like went to bed and just made sure I had all my stuff packed up. My mom was going to be there in the morning, and so the correctional van, like because the minimum unit is a different building, you had to go in this like Corrections Canada van to the main, and then they go through all your belongings and they make sure like you came in with exactly what you had. There's like a huge list. So when I first arrived, I got all institutional stuff, and then my mom had to send me in 5 boxes of my own clothes, and it took a while to get it because they're understaffed, but they have to make sure that every item like lines up. And if you have stuff that you don't, then like, or like, where's this item? And like I'd sold some stuff, but I just say I lost it, because some people didn't have family sending them in clothes. So I'd be like, I have all this stuff, like take it, right? Like I'm leaving. So that's like the least I could do. So I was like, oh yeah, I lost it, or I threw it out, or And they're like, okay, like they know that you didn't actually lose it. But there's nothing they can do because you're gone. You're out, right? And so you check out, and then my mom was there. And according to her, just pranced out like usual. And she had McDonald's waiting for me in the car. We took a picture, like outside the jail, like this. And then she had to take me directly to the halfway house. And so we drove right there. It was awesome.
And that was it? You were back in Hamilton?
Back into Hamilton, but still incarcerated, still had to move to a halfway house, which I wasn't too excited about, but it was part of the process.
And where was Cons and Colonels at this point?
Cons and Colonels was about to get launched, like, because I did an event when I was inside, like the warden, this is how like much I cared about it. Like I told the staff at the halfway house that that's what I wanted to do when I got out, like at least part of my work. And then so they actually petitioned for me to leave the prison when I was still an inmate to come out into the community and give out samples. Like I couldn't sell it because you can't handle money, it's considered contraband. But I had my business partner print off t-shirts and like little cards. So I was let out of the prison for a day. I had like a security guard take me to the event, and I got to basically have an event as Cons and Colonels as an inmate, still incarcerated. I had to go back to the prison at night. Yeah. Fought hard for that. I didn't find out till like the day that I was going, like that I was supposed to go, that it was confirmed. Like that's how stressful it was. It's like, am I going? Like, what's going on? So and I had to go through like 4 levels of approval for me to go out for 3 hours to go out samples, right? So it took like a while, but.
And now you're out.
Yeah, and I'm out.